Our thoughts go out to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. But you know, in every conflict, it seems that something rears its head. There's something we learn about society. And there's nothing different about this. You know, when Russia started to invade Ukraine, it pained all of us. But one of the things that we all stood up is we thought we stood up in solidarity. And we did. And the refugees started to flow away from Ukraine and they started to enter these other countries with open arms. Poland said, come into our country. We can probably house 1 million of you. Ireland said, you know, we will stop requiring the visas for Ukrainians to get over here. Just come on. We want to protect you against the big bad Russian. And that's good. That was great. But you have to ask the question, when Russia and the militias were fighting in Syria, how comes those Syrians that were bombed, those Syrians that were harmed, maimed, they were turned back? Barbed wires were filled up in Hungary and all these other countries to prevent them from coming in. You sit there and you wonder, why? I mean, these are people that are suffering, babies being held in women's arms and sick old women, old men trying to make it out of the devastation created by, you know, the powers fighting each other. Why? You know, and at first I thought I was the only one who saw it. And then I went to an HPJC meeting, Houston Peace and Justice Center meeting. And I brought that up. And it was amazing because several of my compatriots noticed that as well. And I reminded them that, you know, we've seen these kinds of disaster over and over and over again. And the treatment of people with different, who seemingly gets treated with differently. I mean, when the United States invaded Panama, and in order to get one person, Antonio Noriega, they blew up Chorrillo. They blew up the entire block of people that look differently to get this one guy. They didn't send American soldiers into these areas where they could potentially have gotten themselves hurt. They just said, we'll wipe everything out, the civilians as well. Nobody cared. And then, you know, I was happy to see that the AP wrote a note that says, Europe welcomes Ukrainian refugees. Others, less so. So yes, even the Associated Press, notably from Barcelona, Spain, they file into neighboring countries by the hundreds of thousands, refugees from Ukraine, clutching children in one arm, belongings in the other, and they are being heartily welcomed by the leaders of countries like Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Moldova, Romania. But while the hospitality has been applauded, it has also highlighted stark differences in treatment given to migrants and refugees from the Middle East and Africa, particularly Syrians, who came in 2015. Some of the language from these leaders has been disturbing to them and deeply hurtful. These are not the refugees we're used to. These people are Europeans, Bulgarian Prime Minister Kirill Perkov told journalists earlier this week of the Ukrainians. These people are intelligent. They are educated people. This is not the refugee wave we have been used to. People we were not sure about their identity. People with unclear past who would have been even terrorists. In other words, he added, there is not a single European country now which is afraid of the current wave of refugees. Syrian journalist Obka Mohammed says that statement mixes racism and Islamophobia. Mohammed fled his hometown of Dar in 2018. He now lives in Spain and with other Syrian refugees founded the first bilingual magazine in Arabic. But you know, you see that and you say, well, these are just how those guys think. But this permeates the media as well. And that permeation, right, gets to the people themselves. Because people see the world through the media as well. So if you have a derelict media, if you have a media unable to do its job, if you have a media that's not fair, if you have a media that is, may I say, racist, then you get the same kind of result. I want you to listen to this, what we found recently on one of the networks. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
Where it's a civilized city, you wouldn't expect it to happen, nor would you hope for it to happen, which in converse, those other places where these things happen are not civilized, and we don't care if it happens there. You get it? That's the media speaking. That's what's coming out. When you hear the Prime Minister of Bulgaria or these other places say these things about these guys don't look like those other guys who could themselves be terrorists. Now, if we were to enumerate what Russia is doing to the people in Ukraine, these are the same people, same races. Isn't Putin effecting terrorism on the Ukrainians? In other words, white on white terrorism? Isn't that what's occurring? So what does that prime minister mean when he says we don't expect those to be terrorists? Did Putin just use cluster bombs? And it wasn't Putin firing it. These other people could say for humanitarian reason and not to be tried by The Hague, we won't let go cluster bombs on our fellow people in these countries. We won't do that, but they did it. Civilized, what exactly does that mean? Wasn't the numeric system Arabic? Didn't we get a whole lot of our things from those people who may be considered uncivilized? Wasn't it true that Europe many a times during the Inquisition and during other times in the history were a pretty violent bunch until things kind of cleaned up because, it just burnt themselves out? Isn't that the truth? Aren't people just people and not really these false things that these others would like you to believe? Again, within this crisis, like I said, I feel for my Ukrainian brothers and sisters. But it is shameful that a Europe that sometimes like to criticize the United States as being the only very, very racist country or whatever, that they suffer from the same disease. After all, it's the genesis of the country, isn't it? Until we learn to call things the way they are, until we look at things through the right eyes as opposed to through some sort of a false filter, things won't change. Again, it's amazing the violence, the atrocities that you see in Ukraine is absolutely no different than the atrocities that you see in the Middle East when one terrorist group attacks innocent people or one terrorist group fight among themselves. The murder in Panama of 10,000 Panamanians to catch Noriega, those are all evil deeds. We don't call the individuals within the countries evil, but those were all evil deeds. Humanity killing humanity. There are some of us that are simply aberrations to humanity. And those people who have done that, whether it be Russian, whether it be American, whether it be Ukrainian, whether it be Iraqi, whether it be Afghanistani, or Afghanistani, it is no different. It is the same. Evil is evil irrespective of country, and no country has a monopoly on evil. No country has a monopoly on civilized. Who is and isn't civilized? Actually, we skinned people alive here in this country, didn't we? Nobody has a monopoly on evil. There are good people, there are bad people. There are good countries at any given time and bad countries at any given time. And some good countries can become bad and some bad countries can become good. You can have a great kid and you can have a bad kid. Let's be real. Let's just call it the way it is. And going forward, let's just try to make a better person, a better city, a better county, a better state, a better country, a better world. And then we can start talking about making better humanity. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.